A very good evening to you. I am Lisa Lord, and my special guest is the Chief Executive Officer of Export Barbados, Mr. Mark Hill. Mr. Hill, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me, Lisa.
You're most welcome.
Yeah.
Now, Export Barbados is a rebranded Barbados Investment Development Corporation.
Yes, please.
Let's start by looking at what Export Barbados is and its role.
Okay. So as you know, the corporation has been through a number of different iterations. So before it was IDC, the Industrial Development Corporation. At that point, there was this honeycomb of bees working together in industry and collaboration. And you also had the Export Promotion Corporation as well, which is EPC, which I was more affiliated with because it's through the EPC that I actually received a scholarship to study industrial design at the Montfort University in the UK. So then they were amalgamated, and through that amalgamation, you got the Barbados Industrial Development Corporation, and then it further changed its name back in the 1990s to Barbados Investment Development Corporation. And subsequent to that, when PM Motley was Minister of Industry, you would have had the Invest Barbados,
Yes.
which would have moved out. And effectively, Export Barbados was kind of born back then, but for some reason, it didn't materialize in the way it was supposed to materialize. And we had Invest Barbados that has grown and matured and developed, but we still had this brand conflict between what does Invest Barbados do and what does Barbados Investment and Development Corporation do? So when I came in as CEO, so we have to clarify this brand issue. I remember calling a person one day and they saying, "Hi, this is Mark Hill, CEO of BADC," and he said, "Well, I don't want any insurance." You know, and it was like, this is a brand problem. And there's also a TC report that was done by the International Trade Center, and they recommended also a name change in that report. So Cabinet just recently approved the official transition to Export Barbados, but we've been trading ads based on directive from my previous board to trade ads so that in the market, particularly globally, as we were going out into the globe and doing a lot more developmental stuff, you really wanted to not be in the market as BADC for a number of different reasons. You really want to be in the market with a very straightforward name that people can remember and know exactly what you're doing. And we're about exporting Barbados and exporting excellence.
And had BADC remained as BADC, December 1st, you would have celebrated your 30th anniversary because we were established in 1992. So now was the right time for a rebrand.
Yeah, now was the right time for a rebrand. And, overall, the corporation will be now celebrating 68 years, overall from its first inception in industry. And the thing is that brand is what people buy into. Your business is only as good as its brand.
Yes. People
trust brands. So having a very strong, clear brand strategy was one of the key focus when I came in as CEO, but particularly for the global market. In local context, yes, IDC, BADC, people know what it's doing, what it's about. But over a period of time, the corporation became primarily known only for small business development. So you have a small business, go down to BADC, and they would give you a grant or they would give you some sort of support to help your small business. But fundamentally, the mandate, CAP 340, that the corporation operate under, have it framed more so as an export promotion agency. In fact, it's the only agency by law that is responsible for export promotions and export marketing. So the first mandate is to facilitate the export of goods and services. Objective number 2 is to facilitate the research and development for exports. The third mandate is to create instruments and business instruments that allow new goods and services to be exported. So that to that extent, the corporation could engage in setting up subsidiaries. Like you had Island Craft before, that was, it was a small business, a shop that they used to have at the airport selling craft and stuff. So it's a very empowering app that allows you to do a number of things, but historically, it has been forced or maneuvered primarily around small businesses. So what we did now is focus more on export-oriented industrial strategy, because we're only 300,000 people. And how much product can we consume? And what COVID shows us is that when you back tourism out of our economy, it shows what really is our spending capacity as 300,000 people. You know, because we only had like a few hundred tourists on the island, and the economy shrink by 20% in a significant way. So if we only focus on growing the economy around meeting local needs, the economy will contract. So imagine now you have tourism that is back in place functioning, so that gives you back that 20% growth that you lost during the COVID helped us to see that if tourism is to back out totally, you're back just on a basic local spend. But if we can layer on top of that and strengthen the manufacturing and the exports going out and the services going out to augment and strengthen tourism, that you can have a stronger, more resilient economy. So Export Barbados is also about diversifying the economy alongside tourism and building out other tracks that make us a far more resilient, small island, open economy. Yeah.
Before we get too heavy into the export side of things, Export Barbados also manages several industrial estates.
Yeah.
How are they performing?
Yeah, we manage 13 industrial estates, right? 150 acres of space.
Significant.
1.2 million square feet of lettable infrastructure. So really, when we look at industrial and export infrastructure, we have a lot of improvement to do. The current plant, which brownfield plant, is aged, like many things. So as you would normally hear PM Motley make the point about deconstruct and reconstruct. So basically, we are going through a phase of deconstructing. So this building that we're in was one of those buildings that used to be a burn nest, really. Just one manufacturer was in this space. Oz was in here producing the greater coconut and greater cassava. And I think Peter Eddy also was in here. But this building was empty for years. Mm-hmm. Yeah, in fact, the top stairs where the labs are now, that was not used since 1982.
Wow.
When the electronic company pulled out, that space was never used. So you're deconstructing a lot of your brownfield infrastructure and you're repurposing it for new, more high-end value creating opportunities. And so we intend to do that across the estates. As far as the performance is concerned right now, we're still recovering a bit from COVID, but on average, we do around $10 million in revenue from the estates. Of course, we have tenants, because government properties, you still have a level of delinquency.
I was going to ask.
Some folks get put in spaces and they think that they don't have to pay, kind of thing. But we are putting systems in place to address that going forward into 2023, 2024, and more or less positioning corporation to treat business as business.
Up to this point, though, how much is owed in rent?
Yeah, up to this point,
we're in the middle of December.
We're in the middle of December. I would say that we're about 75% of persons that are paying on time, and maybe 25% delinquency at this point.
You're not giving me a dollar figure.
No, yeah, my finance people are not here right now, so I wouldn't give you dollar figure at this point. So I won't pin on myself the dollar figure. I will give you the percentages where we are right now.
Okay, I'll hold you. Yeah. That's fine. So I'm in one of these industrial estates. I'm manufacturing a product that is performing very well locally. Mm-hmm. I want to get it to the export market. How does Export Barbados help? Break it down for me, the process.
Yeah, so let me speak to space first. So the interesting about our space, when we analyze our space usage, you have about 60% of the persons in our space are doing services, right? And primarily providing services to the local market.
What type of services?
Right? So accounting, some legal services as well, call centers, BPOs, that in that particular space. So you don't have that much people in our space actually doing manufacturing, right? It's very, 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 very kind of limited. And the ones who are in that space export quite a great deal already. So you have like Caribbean Label Craft, one of the biggest, more aggressive exporters that just won the Gold Award for exports. They export 95% of their output. So let me come back to the second part of your question in terms of how does the pipeline work.
Yes.
So right now, what we do, we have a very tight relationship with the trust fund. So think of it as a pipeline. So the trust fund persons will go there, get the business development support, and then as soon as the persons are ready now to scale, then they come over into our Export Academy, and our Export Academy then help them to scale up into our tier system. So we have a 5-tier system. So if you're exporting over 10 million US and above, you're in tier 1. 5 million above, you're in tier 2. 1 million above, you're in tier 3. 500,000, I think it is, you're in tier 4, and anything below that, you're in tier 5, right? So, because at each point, your needs are going to change. So, for example, our tier 1 exporters, primarily these are privately well-funded companies. So, Mount Gay Rum, they're owned by a French company, I think Remy Martin. So, therefore, they're not going to come to us for technical assistance. They're not going to come to us for capital. They're not going to come to us for space because they're landlords
well-established
and owners and well-established. The same thing with Roberts as well. They're not going to come to us. So their needs are a lot different from somebody who are at tier 3, who may have a lot of research and development needs. So they may be in business. They may be a family-owned company to a certain extent, but it might not have the capital to risk in research and development. So they may get special technical assistance. They may get participate in an accelerating program or something of that nature. But then you have the smaller businesses in the tier 5. And by the way, when we look at the number of businesses from tier 1 to tier 5, it scales up significantly. So in tier 1, we have about 6 companies that can count on my hands. You have West Indies Rum, Mount Gay, Arawak Cement Plant, you have Roberts, you have also Goddard Enterprise and those folks, right? So these are tier 1 exporters. But then, and those are 6 people. But then when we come down to tier 5, we're 111, right? So then that 111 become the base where a lot of the business development work is spent with them in collaboration between trust loans, the rest of the ecosystem, so fund access and EGF and all the others, and then push them to us when they're ready now for the rest of the world to go into the world. So that's how the pipeline is kind of set up at this point.
And then we get to export certification.
Export certification, yeah. So the export certification is, again, is a collaborative, because at this point, who issues export licenses is customs, right? So you got to go through customs to actually get your. It's actually kind of hodgepodge. And it needs to be fixed. So you got to go to about 7 agencies to actually get registered as an exporter. So you got to go through town and country planning, you got to go through government electrical, you got to go through Ministry of Health. All these agencies kind of sign off before you can become an exporter. So we got some stuff to fix.
Yeah, I'm listening to this as a small manufacturer, and I'm already saying this is not making sense. Yeah, it sounds like a lot of red tape.
Yeah, so you got a lot of work to do, right? You got a lot of work to do, and I think that a sandbox has to be created to encourage both foreign direct investors that want to come into the space to manufacture and local manufacturers. The amount of work you got to go through to become a manufacturer / to become an exporter is a lot of paperwork, a lot of stuff you got to do. So there can be a degree of drag.
Yes.
In between there. So that's why we kind of separate out what it takes to set up a small business in Barbados. You just go and register at corporate affairs at Kaipo, and you don't have to meet the health standards. You don't have to hit the HACCP standards and stuff. So the other members of the ecosystem can focus on that stuff. But then when it comes now to getting into exports, we're going to make sure that all the ducks are lined up. And then you're going to meet certain standards with EPA and standards with Europe. And so then the certification become really, really important going forward. So that's where we help we help you on that side to get all that paperwork and ducks lined up. Yeah.
And there's special provision for exporting to CARICOM. Tell me about that.
Yeah, the special provision for exporting for CARICOM under the CARICOM single market arrangement, you know, is a little bit more, I won't say it's not as much paperwork as the other the other companies. Is even though to a certain extent there are some rules in CARICOM that do present problems for some member states. So like a Rule 164, which we can't do anything about at this point in time, but we got to innovate our way around it. But CARICOM still remains in the midst of that our largest market. So 75% of all the exports, certified exports, and let me just make it clear, not overall domestic exports, because Export Barbados, we deal with certified exports, you know. 75% of all certified exports go to CARICOM. So you got currently Jamaica, from the data from the end of January, Jamaica is our top export partner at this point in time, followed by Guyana, then followed by Trinidad, then followed by St. Kitts and Nevis, and St. Lucia, St. Vincent, coming down the line like that. So 75% of what we produce go to those 6, 7 islands at this point in time.
Which means 25%,
Go to
only
the rest of the world.
25% is going elsewhere. So
Yeah.
how difficult is it then to get into the international market?
Yeah, it's not difficult. So getting into America is not difficult. Getting into the UK is not difficult, and these other markets. But what I find the issue is distribution. Because one, the distribution strategies of a lot of small businesses and distribution networks are not that strong. So remember, you got like the rum manufacturers that have got very well-developed, mature distribution network in 125 countries. You will have some of our persons who are involved in packaging,
right,
who are really very strong in the Latin American market, you know, Dominican Republic, Costa Rica, and they're getting into these spaces. But you'll find now that the smaller players, you know, their reach is primarily into, you know, St. Lucia, Cayman Islands, these kind of places, but they're still facing challenges now because of logistics. So if we can fix the logistics, you can see a significant bump in regional exports, right? Consolidating smaller packages together, because everybody can't fill
a container.
20-foot container.
Yeah, that was one of the concerns raised by the head of the BMA.
Right.
Yeah.
So we actually have a center at Pelican called the Trade Center, where you can bring your packages and consolidate, and then we put all them in a 20-foot container, and you put all them together and ship out. You know, so under the Guyana St. Barnabas Accord agreement, that center is being opened up and is being functioning. So bringing in stuff like from Guyana to Barbados, that center is used, and now we're putting together shipments to go out. We actually did a consolidated shipment to Ghana, and that worked really well. So, and then we just launched in Ghana a massive sales program for Barbadian products. So we've been working on the logistics and the distribution systems, so that is the key. So while we have 52 fantastic trade agreements, bilateral trade agreements, but in each market you don't have 52 distribution systems. So we now have to build our distribution systems. And one of the things that we just looked at, we just had a franchising expo, a franchising training. So we believe that franchising is an effective model for building out a new distribution track, including having what we call a super franchise, which is one that is an anchor franchise that carries small labels, rather than you having to market, you know, Miss Kitty Best pepper sauce and Mildred seasoning and Vadney this, and you know, we got everybody has their own name on their product, that you can actually enter into agreements and bring all these different flavor profiles, just for example, under one super brand, and that super brand we can market globally, like Grace, for example.
Right.
You know, Kellogg's have so many different ranges of products. Even Coca-Cola has a wide range of products. So while when we come into the export space, you know, small and micro enterprises got to look at the fact that it's partnerships and investment models that's going to help the growth, and not just organically growing your small business from, you know, a kitchen type scenario into this global billion-dollar industry overnight. Yeah.
Earlier, you mentioned Ghana, and I'm glad you did because Barbados is looking to get more products onto the African continent. Export Barbados signed 3 MOUs during the recent Afri-Caribbean Trade and Investment Forum. If you could elaborate on those MOUs for me.
Yeah. Okay, so we signed 2, right? Export Barbados
Well,
signed
3
2.
were signed.
3 were signed,
Mhm.
right? The one was for CARICOM, Caribbean, Afro-Exim Bank modeling it out, and I believe all the ministers would have signed on to that. I think 7 ministers, prime ministers from around the Caribbean signed on to that. I think President Ali was the last person to sign on to that. So I think that is progressive. Also, the Export Barbados signed an MOU with Exim Bank for their support with us developing our own Exim Bank, which is important because from a developmental standpoint, we have primarily been supporting small businesses through a special technical assistance program. And we had an underperforming export credit scheme through the central bank. And we also had an underperforming industrial credit fund through the central bank. That meant that if you want to get support to export or to build out your industrial stuff, you had to go through the commercial banks, and that commercial bank loan would have been supported and backed by the central bank. But it was never really utilized and used. So we just had a MOU signed with the Indian Exim Bank as well. And they were on the ground last week and now modeling out for us how our Exim Bank will meet the needs for growing exports and growing industry. So the African Exim Bank also signed with us in terms from the finance side, how they will provide finance support for the Exim Bank of Barbados that we're modeling out with the Indians. So there's a lot of collaboration taking place, a lot of work happening on the ground between the Indians and Africans. And then we also signed an MOU with Ghana Export Agency for collaboration. So training, collaboration, youth in exports, women in exports going forward. So those are the 2 MOUs that Export Barbados signed.
Now, are most of the producers coming to Export Barbados, are they meeting the required standards to get to the export market?
Well, with this facility that we're in, the International Food Center, is our first attempt to make sure that we get there. So, for example, the key thing about exports is traceability, right? So, end-to-end traceability. So, where did this input come from? As far as from the farm to the fork, right? That's on the food side. So, we really want to specialize in the science between the farm and the fork. So, for example, you will go later, you will see that we opened last week, but now we're testing each product traceability. So, for example, the small business person that would have been home, you know, you go to Carlton or you go to Massey and you buy onions, or you go to wholesale, you buy onions and just make your seasoning, and then at the end of the day, you can't tell where that onion come from, who farm it, who produce it. That can't happen here. So here, we're going to be able to trace where those onions come from, how they were processed, and document every single stage in that onion right through to when it reached the logistics distribution center to the customer. You know, so traceability is key. And because what HACCP really underscore is not just health and safety in the plant, but the health and safety for the customer and the end user. So significant levels of traceability. So for example, our CMOS, which we're growing off Collington, again, traceability. So each raft has a number, and each raft, so we know that the sea moss that is being used as a replacement for cornstarch in that particular pepper sauce came from raft number 2 or raft number 3, and the volume. So the science and the data behind the production process is the key behind HACCP. So small business persons don't necessarily put in that kind of detail and work, but we have to do it here to prepare them for export.
And the center at this point is focusing on sauces and condiments in the first phase.
Yeah, at first phase. Yeah, so wet stuff, and then we're going to add freeze dry technology. We're going to add frozen food technology. We're going to add natural juices technology, but specifically within the health and wellness space, because that's linked right back to our life science focus and is linked right back to our global brand and our global positioning in the marketplace.
What has the response been like since launching?
Yeah, we get a lot of calls across the board, and the response from the staff is a lot of innovation is taking place. Something as simple as an onion, we will take you in there and say, you just take it for granted, oh, it's just onion, it's just pepper sauce. But no, when it comes now to the HACCP certification process, you're talking about scale.
Right.
So for example, one of the kettles in there are using 500 pounds of onion at one point. So the science behind how do you preserve onion, how do you get it to scale, maintain it, there's a lot of scientific work behind it, keeping the bacteria out, managing all the different strains of this and strains of that, and the different this scale at this production level where you can produce 3,000 bottles of sauce per hour. As opposed to you home by hand doing 100 bottles a day. Is a different scenario altogether.
So digitizing the sector more or less.
Yeah, you got to digitize it. As I was explaining to you before off camera, it's like drive-through for manufacturers. So you still have to have a proper point of sale system in place that is tracking where everything is right throughout the entire process, right through to delivery. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I'm tracking the time and it's time for a break. Mr. Hill, stay with us. Stay with us. You're watching One on One.
Tell me who a man spends his time with, and I'll tell you the type of man he is. Isn't it true that people become like the company they keep? I'm Chris Hurdle, clinical psychologist and certified life coach. Where do you spend most of your time? What is your emotional space like? Do you find yourself most often among people who are negative, naysayers, doom and gloom, or fearmongers? Or do you find yourself mostly among people who are positive, optimistic, calm, collected, and reassuring, who exude confidence? What is your emotional space like? Be intentional. You are the pilot of your life.
Welcome back. We're chatting with the CEO of Export Barbados, Mr. Mark Hill. Mr. Hill, now rum, you mentioned rum several times in the first half. It still continues to be our leading export product. Mm-hmm. Let's talk rum.
Okay, let's talk rum. Yeah, rum is interesting. The first thing that would come to mind when it comes to rum is this whole discussion about, GIs and stuff like that. So one of the things that we've made a commitment to do is to educate the public about GIs, and also to educate the public about fermentology. So part of the Food Center strategy is to treat the fermentology as also a small business opportunity for the broader market, right? So we're going to be introducing micro distilleries into different villages. So you can have, Silver Sands, a person in Silver Sands producing Silver Sands rum. We already have one micro distillery in St. Nicholas Abbey.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So the intent is that to broaden the ownership of the rum sector, and then through the Food Science Center, introduce alternative rum profiles as well, so that innovation is also being brought to the rum sector. But again, the network that we're building out in Africa so that through that, small entrepreneurs that are using micro distilleries can now have market offtake and market opportunities going forward. So it's really the big players that, Rami Martin that owns the Mount
Okay,
Gay,
yeah.
and I think it is Cognac that owns the West Indies rum, and then there's the RL Seal Group. These are well capitalized companies, but what we're looking at as smaller bespoke opportunities that are there into the boutique market. And so that's where a lot of our support is going to go. So we've been working to get rum from its $80 million threshold, because we seem not to, it was like a plateau, and to push it to at least 100 million in exports by 2030. So we're in discussions with the players, but we believe that getting a lot more micro distilleries coming into the system that can offer this home of rum scenario a broader pool of players. Because there was a lot of distilleries in Barbados before, but now we're down to just 4. And so there's a market that is full of innovation and a lot more diversified.
And while rum is the market leader for exports, a lot of other products are doing well.
Yeah,
Paint,
absolutely.
for example, we do very well with regards to exporting paint, crackers, etc.
Yeah, packaging.
Yes.
Yeah, so those are fast growing, and you will see coming through the system very aggressively pharmaceuticals and life science products. Because we also do a lot of exports in that area as well. So Carly Labs, Collins, those folks, but we anticipate that we will be attracting some pharmaceutical companies on island, especially around the recently completed life science economic roadmap study. We should be seeing a significant ramp up in life science exports as well. So I think the future is bright for what we call bioeconomy exports, called rum fall under the broader bioeconomy framework. And we expect that our biotrade, as we tighten up on these things, as we link our oceans and what our oceans can offer this space as well together, that we should see significant growth in our exports in our area.
You mentioned rum doing about $80 million annually in exports. But overall, in terms of certified exports, what is the contribution to foreign exchange to our economy?
Yeah.
With all the products combined.
Right. So overall exports at the end of the year tends to be around 300 million overall US dollars. Right. That's on average. Right. And that's with exports declining at 5% per annum. So we used to be all up in 500 and something million, and we come down the line. So that's about 10%, 15% of the overall exports is rum. Yeah. But we got a lot of little small little contributors, right? So our export basket right now is around 27 products overall. And now we're trying to expand that. And by products, I mean product areas.
Yeah.
Yeah, product areas, not products per se. As I think you have in your hand there
yes, I do.
Your product catalog.
Yes.
But as far as the export basket is very, very narrow. But not only is it narrow, it's aged. It's aged. It's like rum, right? It's over 25 years. And the most complex product that we actually have in our export basket is the lenses from LensTech.
Yeah.
Right? And pharmaceuticals. So we don't have much scientific value add, which would give you more money, higher paying jobs, et cetera, et cetera. We're more down just basic food processing as one of our core export portfolios. And then around that is exporting like recycled products, like what bees do. They push back up a lot of product, and then graphics and packaging and stuff like that. So the key is that how do we make our export basket a lot more sophisticated with greater high-end scientific exports, And that's where you're having all this discussion around the life sciences, the food science, and even clean technology exports, because we also have the Bloom cluster as well, where we're looking at renewables and how we can begin to manufacture renewables in our space and stuff like that. So more high-end, high-tech, scientific-based exports we're trying to focus on to get that growth going on.
And I'll come back to quiz you on the renewables. But just a few days ago, Barbados hosted Cuba's president and his delegation, and several areas of future cooperation were agreed upon. And we know that Cuba has always been kind to Barbados, especially in the area of health.
Yeah.
What are these other areas of cooperation that we're looking at?
Yeah, well, we will sign the MOU by a Cuba farmer, right? Now, this is a company that has under it, so this is like the macro holding company. Under it has over 110 other scientific companies with close to 2,300 patents in biotechnology and life sciences. So you're talking about a real heavy hitter as far as the life sciences and health and wellness is concerned. So the purpose of our MOU is for collaboration with research and development. So with the food sciences, for example, the collaboration, we'll anticipate that Cuban scientists will be coming and working here in this space, and Barbadian scientists also going over and learning as well. But they also have a very interesting portfolio of technologies and platforms in terms of cancer treatment, diabetic foot care, and particularly the diabetic foot care product actually is manufactured from sugarcane, right? So when we talk about our sugarcane industry and we're only limiting it to producing rum and not producing pharmaceuticals, we're not really talking about taking the sugarcane industry and reforming it. So Cuba has that patent, has that technology. So signing with Cuba Pharma allows us now to bring in and transfer skills, transfer technology to Barbados so that then we can leverage some of those, their expertise to grow in those specific type of markets in that biotech, pharmaceutical, life science space. Yeah.
But over the years, our trading with Cuba has been fairly insignificant.
Yeah. Well, Cuba's been on an embargo for a while, and a lot of the companies that we have here have investments outside of Barbados, so we have to look closely at how we just move talent and how we leverage talent and expertise in to navigate some of these blockages that we need to deal with in order to boost trade between the two economies. Yeah.
Now, for many years, the name Mark Hill has been synonymous with renewable energy and clean energy, and you're ensuring that export Barbados still has a focus when it comes to renewable energy. You mentioned the Bloom cluster. If you could explain what that is.
Yeah, but the Bloom cluster was a program with UNIDO, and primarily it's about startups in that clean space. So both bioeconomy startups, so persons in the biospace. So you got folks like Joshua Fort with his fertilizers and stuff like that. You also have a young lady in there that is producing bio-based materials. So she's taking sargassum seaweed and she's producing an alternative plastic with it. We also have persons in there that is battery technology and developing alternative storage systems, e-mobility. So startups, but with White and Bloom, and we also employ persons and upskill them under the Bloom program as well. So this is just guys off the block, off the street. We teach them to install solar panels in there. So transfer a lot of the skills that I brought into the job to the guys off the block and stuff, and women off the block and stuff like that. So that program has been going successfully for years. So we teach them biosafety, renewable energy installation, biogas production, and now the CMOS farming. We actually have 5 men who've been growing that CMOS successfully up at Collington St. Lucie, along with the instructor, Carl St. John. So I'm very, very happy with how that Bloom program has been running. Thank the Minister of finance for facilitating that and making the resources available for us to be able to do that. But at the corporation side as well, we are one of the biggest landlords.
Yes.
As I said, 150 acres, and we have a capacity for 20 megawatts. So we're going to use that as one of the strategies to wean ourselves off of the need for government subventions. Yeah. So we're one of the SOEs that have to be reformed, and we're going through that reform process. And we see that we can leverage the infrastructure that we have to generate certain levels of revenue using renewable energy. And on the industry side now, particularly biopharma and pharmaceuticals, you have to produce pharmaceuticals with clean technology in today's market. So we have to green the entire industry infrastructure. So all the power systems have to be relooked at in order that every product that we produce out of here, particularly pharmaceutical products, can make that claim that they are 100% sustainable. Because the investors that will be investing in these biopharma companies, we will call EGS investors. So they're looking at environment, they're looking at government, they're looking at society impact. So, and their money is really wrapped around the value, and not just the values, and not just how much they're making. So is a key compliance factor as we go forward. Carbon and climate change impacts and stuff like that. So when we look at industry coming into the job, well, you would think, what does a renewable energy background has to do with this? But actually you realize that, 40% of what you're dealing with from an infrastructure point of view, renewable energy underpins how you reposition industry as a whole. So for example, one of the key things that we're focusing on now is green hydrogen.
Yeah.
Right. So we signed an MOU with Shell through, it was the Prince Trust at that time, but not Prince Trust, it was the Prince Foundation, something like that where they came on. And now, he's king now. And so they would have worked on bringing to the table, through a very effective due diligence process, a partner to help get Barbados into the green hydrogen space. So we have Shell, we have also 2 other hydrogen players in the market. And we're also looking at the possibility of how natural gas can be scrubbed, decarbonized to give us blue hydrogen for industry as well. And then how we can leverage hydrogen not only for industrial productions, but also hydrogen for exports to ships and for other economies that need hydrogen as well. So and all that resides on that renewable energy background that I came to the table with. Yeah.
And if I could just ask you to take off your CEO hat for a minute, are you pleased with where Barbados is when it comes to the push to use renewable energy?
I'm pleased from a policy point of view, in terms of, because we know we can do it as an island, right? The demand, 150 megawatts peak, it's not much. California actually has all the power that they generate with renewables right now is more than enough to meet all of Barbados needs, right? So there's cities and states that already have the infrastructure installation that can make us 100%. So one, the political will is there. So that really energizes me. This is my CEO hat off, right? So I'm really pleased that we have a passionate leadership that's passionate about climate, passionate about renewable energy, and passionate about life in general. This is me, Mark Hill, talking with my CEO hat off, right? So because of that commitment from leadership, I am also passionate, right? Now, what we need is the finance and the finance mechanism. So there's a lot of funding out there, but I think that there's still some reform that has to take place and transformations that have to take place as far as who gets access to funding, right? Who qualifies for funding, right? So we still have a scenario where the same pool of people that always have access to capital are the same people dominating the space, right? And we have scenarios where some people seem to think that that is okay. So I'm in the Prime Minister's camp where it has to be democratized. So the fact that every householder can have 10 megawatts of renewable, 10 kilowatts of renewable energy on their house is a right. I'm excited about that. And when householders see me, Mr. Hill, what's I say? I tell them, send me a light bill, and I will sit down and sketch it out for them quick and send it off to them and point them in this direction, that direction to get the system installed as effective and as cost effective as possible. So I'm passionate, really pleased about that. But at the end of the day, we have about $18 billion on the banks and the credit unions sitting down. And so the locals investing some of that in this new renewable energy infrastructure, we need to stop second guessing ourselves. The sun is going to rise between 5:30 and 6 o'clock every morning. It's going to set at 5. So you don't have to second guess whether renewable energy works. You need to invest. Yeah. So I think that message needs to get out there still. We second guess one another a lot, and there's still a certain level of distrust in our society and distrust in investment, distrust in science that we need to work through. So with my CEO hat off, there's that. And to be honest with you, when I transition from CEO, I'm going straight back into the hydrogen market and focus on getting this country to run 100% on hydrogen. So if I get done as CEO, fine. If I don't, I will still work and labor to get done outside of my role as CEO. And then finally, I think that our oceans have a lot of renewable energy capacity. We signed an MOU with a Finnish company called Willow Oil, and they have a wave energy harvesting. Now, I do my little bit surfing when I can, because I grew up in Black Rock and surf out Bats Rock. And when Paradise had its break with plywood, because I couldn't afford the fancy surfboards. Yeah. So you used to surf with plywood, and then you do boogie boarding and hulling and stuff like that out in Pearl Bay. But waves are a lot of renewable energy, and East Coast don't ever stop. It's terawatts of energy over there. So with Willow and the team, you're going to see developments happening in that wave energy space as well. So leveraging all the resources that we have around us. Again, as an island, we're good at growing grass. Sugarcane is a grass. But other grasses, river tambourine, elephant grass, all these other grasses. But guess what they're good for? Producing methane. So biomethane production, actually we have a plant coming at the top where we're putting the International Food Science, not the life science part, up at the top next to Gildan. There's a biogas plant that's coming there also, right? So no holds bar, I'm giving it 200% because I'm running against the clock, right? I don't think that you're in these jobs forever, and therefore when you're in them, you have to give more than your best. You have to give it 200% and deliver results, So that's the intent, to just deliver results and give the island the best that they can get at this point in time.
Well, you're still very passionate. I'm glad to see that.
Yeah.
So CEO hat back on now, back on. In the first half, we discussed industrial estates. And one of the estates, the export Barbados has responsibility for, Pelican. And for years.
Well, you was asking hard questions.
No, this is nothing that you can't answer. So Pelican Village. For years, vendors have been complaining about not getting enough traffic passing through the village. I know that Export Barbados recently tried to breathe some new life into it, but still hearing the same complaints, not enough business. So what can be done?
Yeah, the Pelican is an anomaly.
An anomaly?
It's an anomaly, right? It's an anomaly because of design.
Explain.
It's a design problem. So it cannot be fixed apart from totally redesigning the concept, right? So for example, you have Pelican Island
Mm-hmm.
as an experience that has not been effectively mapped out nor marketed as an island, not just the village.
Yeah.
So the island starts from inside the port, right? Including Pelican House, where our headquarters is, very corporatized, right? And then you come into a village that once used to feel like a village,
Yeah.
that now feels like a lawyer's accounting design space. Right? It feels very corporate. So in a nutshell, what we're trying to do is to say to the tenants, don't get trapped within these four walls. And that's what I'm trying to communicate. Get outside back into the open. And getting back outside into the open, there's a new vendors law that has been passed that allows you to play your trade. Can your trade cross by Trevor's Highway where the people walking up and down? Because you're on stuck on a boat. Can I talk straight?
Of course.
Right? So you're stuck on a boat. Then you're dock in Barbados. You don't want to leave a very sterile environment on a boat to come into another sterile design space at Pelican, right? So the trees become a natural gravitational pull. Because now on that side, you feel you're more in touch with nature. You can see the rocks and this nice warm walk down the road, right? That's on one hand. Those are for those who decide to walk. But on the other hand, you also have a business ecosystem in the tourism space that before the tourists could even get off the boat, they're already booked to go to
tours.
Tours in the north and tours in the south and tours in the east and the west.
Yeah.
Right? So fundamentally, the hard question has to be asked, is Pelican really the space to use for that type of activity? Now, if I take off my CEO hat, I, Mark Hill, will be putting a tank all the way Traverse Highway next to the taxi man and selling my stuff.
Yeah, but I'm paying you to use Pelican.
Yeah, but you use Pelican as a maker space, not necessarily as a space to meet your customers' needs. You understand where I'm coming from?
Mm-hmm.
So it's really about business is business. The corporation is not responsible for your sales. You as a business person responsible for your sales. So you got to position, partner, network with the appropriate people to get your sales up. The corporation is there. The space can be used effectively for making and for producing and to help you to meet your thing. So however we position it mentally, I treat Pelican more as a design studio space,
right?
More as a maker space, but not the space where you sell.
You don't think you're going to get some flack for that?
Well, I get flack for a lot of things.
Okay.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, business is business, right? And it has to be repurposed for growth. You understand where I'm coming from? And for business growth. So while we're trying to treat it into a cultural center, sometimes you got to wait between this as a cultural Pelican craft space as opposed to a shopping center, right? So as a shopping center, I think it can meet a lot more needs, as a food court that people can come, welcome staffers can come and work the whole day in this very relaxed environment with some umbrellas. So we're still doing some investments to make it, we're painting it, modernizing it. But to say that the tourist will be the main customer, I, from a business standpoint, struggle with that. Yeah.
And if briefly you could share some of your thoughts in terms of your plans going into 2023 for Export Barbados briefly.
Yeah, so going forward, it's the double down. We now finish up the Deloitte life science studies. So that's going to become the core of our delivery going into 2024. Delivering on a SOE that's responsible, that is leveraging its resources effectively and being a lot more efficient, is also one of the key focus. But it's what I call tightening the ball. We have a lot of stuff happening in Barbados, but it happens very ad hoc.
Yeah.
Right? And we also have a lot of duplicity. So we have 2 and 3 agencies trying to do the same thing. So it's continuing to back out of some of those spaces and give others room, and then really zero in on being an expert in your area. So we're looking to just continue to grow and simplify the model, because the more we can simplify the model, then you can get ease of business. We got this notion that we can talk about the ease of business without making it easy to do business. If you understand where I'm coming from, all right? As though the ease of business is some policy decision. No, it is simply about simpler business functions, removing all these layers of approvals, and everybody's saying, want to say yes, but one person they say no.
They're going to 7 different entities for
7
export
different entities to become a manufacturer, and so we got a lot of reform work to do, right? We got a lot of non-workers. Understand me by non-worker?
Yeah, of
there
course.
are persons who are in position they really don't have nothing to do.
Yeah.
So they make non-work their work, and I know I get licks for that, but sorry, but
no, that's fine.
Yeah, I just gotta be Mark, right?
And I appreciate you being Mark and being blunt and being transparent, and for taking the time to sit and speak with us this evening. I really appreciate it.
Yes, no problem. Thanks, Lisa.
You're most welcome. That was Mr. Mark Hill, the CEO of Export Barbados. I'm Lisa Lord. You are watching One on One. Do have yourself a wonderful evening.